institutions and associations and call it good, bad, or evil without defining what it is. I brought up the suggestion or the example of a socialistic society in the military.
I never considered that. Makes sense.
It does. Yeah. So
those damn socialist Marines.
Right. So yeah, enlightening, interesting, and it's this country has thrived on individualism and capitalism and being extraordinary, and I see that following that path continues or perpetuates the greatness of America. I think it fits our mindset, our lifestyle, and certainly our growing population.
Well, I'll just part in saying that I'll kind of piggyback on what Joe said. Make sure you know what you're talking about before you open up your pie hole. Communism has never worked anywhere as in the world as a way to run a government. I'll just say that. Co-ops, sure. Catholic Church, of course. Maybe the military, communism/socialism. Okay, so but that's not a socialist society or a communist society. That's a society who embraces some of the attributes of those systems. Okay, we live in the best country in the world, and basically through capitalism, we've got so much in this country. And before you say, you know what, I think communism is a good thing, especially if you're a young person who hasn't researched it. If you use your phone to play video games and show people pictures of your cats and that's all, do as Joe suggests. Why don't you look that stuff up? Look up to see what type of person Che Guevara was, Mao Zedong, Joseph Stalin, Hugo Chavez, and just see if that's really what you want for yourself. Okay, is that really what you want? Is it really what you want? Check it out. Now, before we go, Joe, I did want you to mention one thing. You're an author now, and you've got your book of poetry. You're doing your book tour, and you're also writing. You mentioned downstairs before the show. You're writing another book. What is this all about? Are you ready to talk about that, or did I catch you off guard?
Well,
you can talk about the poetry only if you want to.
Talking about entrepreneurism, I was helping a friend of mine with who retired and decided he wanted to become a poet, and he said, I need some help with the poetry, and I said, okay, fine. And he then said, do you know anybody who can get a book of my poetry published? And I said, do you want it like to go through New York, or do you just want, no, I just want books.
Mm-hmm.
And that was about this time last year, and Steve Nagel got his book put together, which is Rendezvous and Other Poems of Forest Park. Forest Park is a large city park in St. Louis, and it has the zoo and the history museum and the art museum and pretty much a lot of the cultural things in the city. And Steve had his, we got his book together about these poems of places that he really enjoys in that city park. And I'm also a writer. So the two of us decided to take some of our other stuff, and we put together a book called the Pawpaw Almanac and Reader. And this is a book mostly of Midwest outdoors, Midwest history, things like the bullet hole in the Jesse James house, what it's like to go gigging in the Ozarks, a long poem about the Missouri River, which is still in flood at the moment, and just kind of a miscellany of whatever other topics we were thinking about at the time. We are right now in the process of putting together a book that is going to be Missouri Rivers, which will also be little short prose pieces and poems. And what I mentioned downstairs was I'm writing a novel which is called The Rockhound Rangers. It probably will never make the New York Times bestseller list.
Catchy title.
You never know.
But it's an interesting story about a lady geologist who is in a relationship with a BLM minerals ranger in Montana.
Okay.
And I'm only on chapters 13. I am not certain how it's going to end. But that's what that's all about.
Give it a happy ending, would you? That'd be cool.
Well, it's not going to follow your usual course. The boy meets girl course. No, this is not what's happening here. Next March, Steve and I are both going to be doing poetry readings. We're going to be doing one at the Focal Point in St. Louis, and we'll be doing one at the library in Pacific, where I live. And I'm still out shaking the bushes for other venues.
That's outstanding. Congratulations to you for being a free spirit and doing what you want. Thanks for coming out.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Mad Dog, you too. Thanks for coming as always.
That's always fun.
It's always fun. Thanks a lot. And thanks to the listeners for listening. Listen to the podcast. If you're listening to the podcast, there's a good chance you know how to get it because you've got it, okay? But there's all kinds of platforms that you can get. I mean, I am shocked at the number of ways you can get the podcast. And I'm trying to look for my list because I can't even remember all the different ways you can get the podcast. I can't find the list, so we'll have to read it another time. But SoundCloud, Spotify, Spreaker.com, of course, iTunes, iHeartRadio, radio.com, all kinds of different places you can get the podcast.
But the best way?
The best way, they have Facebook and Twitter, of course, but the best way, send me an email. JamesStrongShow@hotmail.com. Send me an email. I then have your email, and I will go ahead and email you a link to the podcast upon publication. You can download it and listen to it at your leisure. And I think more people are doing this because I will say that downloads are way up. Listenership is kind of steady, but downloads are way up, where people are now downloading it and listening to it later instead of just listening to it at the same time or clicking on Spreaker.com and listening to it. They download it and listen to it later. That's the best way to do it because you can do it whenever you want, in my opinion. And do me a favor if you would. Just go ahead and send send the link to a friend of yours, somebody who may not know about the podcast. Hey, listen to this knothead. He's halfway good. Maybe you'll enjoy it. And we'll build a listenership that way. That's it. We're done. Thanks to Joe Shaper. Thanks to the Mad Dog. And thanks to you folks for listening. Until next time, this is James Strong saying adios.